Hey everyone, welcome back. So we got a few updates for this week. We now have a vertical progress bar that keeps track of how many butterflies you've caught. And basically you can't actually activate the little altar over here until you caught the entire field of butterflies. So this is just a basic way to give the player some feedback and let them know how many butterflies they've caught versus how many are still in the field. So I've also added a little cutscene that now triggers when you add your sort of jar of butterflies or fireflies to the altar. And you can see the particle effects are working for the butterflies and the fireflies. That just gives the player a bit more interesting feedback. So let's take a look at how I did this and a couple other things too. So another thing that you might notice right away is that I actually redesigned the field a little bit. So now the flowers are in sort of clusters and in smaller clusters surrounded by little plants. And I did that because I finally posted some of this gameplay on the Godot subreddit, and I got some interesting feedback. Some people said that like the field was a little bit too noisy, like it was too busy. So it was kind of difficult to see the butterflies on top of all of the individual flowers and individual plants. And so I just wanted to actually see what it would look like if I redesigned the field a little bit, just to make it a bit more, or a bit less cluttered rather. And you can see the butterflies a bit better when they're sort of flying over the open patches of empty ground. So I actually kind of like it. I still might make some changes, but I think that was some valuable feedback, I think. Another thing I'm doing is you can't actually tell anymore because I'm hiding the mouse when it's hovering over the window. But if I click off screen and lose focus, then I trigger the pause menu. So basically before I was doing that, the game would just keep going, and I realized that's not something I want to happen. So as soon as the window loses focus, it opens up the pause menu and you can see the mouse again. And then when you click back to go back to gameplay, it hides the mouse and closes the pause menu. So it just feels a bit more like an actual game should, and hopefully nobody's running into any errors or anything like that when they're clicking somewhere else and the game is still running. One of the things I really love about Godot is how easy it makes to implement things like progress bars. Basically, I just have a texture that goes underneath, one that goes over on top, and then the progress bar itself. So currently my progress bar, the sprite itself is white, but then you can just recolor it to be whatever you like. And it's really simple. So whenever the net comes in contact with a butterfly, all it does is increment the progress value by 1. And then it does some things when it gets to the top, like the max value and stuff like that. But otherwise, it's pretty simple, and I'm really liking the way Godot handles these kinds of things. So something I might have to change in the near future is that the way the progress bar's max value is determined is by the number of butterflies on the screen every time you enter the field. And so the number of butterflies on the screen is actually randomized, and that's not actually the greatest thing because I need to store a sort of constant value for the butterflies in order for the progress bar value to not do weird stuff. So for example, the progress bar is right here based on the max value currently of the butterflies in the screen. So if I leave the field scene and then come back, this value is going to change a little bit. And it might be a little difficult to see, but it's a little bit lower. And that's because the actual number of butterflies in the field has changed, and therefore the position of the texture sort of progress bar that's keeping track of the number of butterflies I've caught has also changed. So here you can kind of see it's in the middle. If I leave the field and come back, it's a little bit lower, and that's because there's more butterflies. So I'm gonna have to change that, but otherwise the way progress bars works is pretty intuitive and really simple. So I'm glad I can throw something together that actually looks legit in a relatively short amount of time. So now when the player adds either the butterfly jar or the firefly jar to the little altar scene, it will actually trigger the particles attached to each of the pillars. So basically I'm checking to see whether or not the player can interact with the butterfly pillar. And I'm doing the same thing for the firefly pillar. Basically, you can only interact with the butterfly pillar when it's daytime and when your progress bar is full, meaning you've caught all the butterflies in the field. Or at least that's how it's going to be. Currently, you can add the jar whenever you want, but as soon as you do that, it gets the player node and sets its physics to false, just so you can't actually move around during the cutscene. It hides the jar, it empties out the jar, and then does a bunch of other stuff just to step through the cutscene itself. So got my letterboxing, and then there's some yields that actually wait until the letterbox is finished, etc. And at the very end, it shows the jar, which is now empty, and resets the player physics to true, so you can keep walking around. And that's the way it's going to work. Basically, you have to catch all the butterflies in the field before it will allow you to place the jar on the pillar and activate the particles and sort of progress the very short story that's this sort of game prototype is going to have. But currently, as I mentioned, you can do it during the daytime when it's for butterflies and at nighttime for fireflies. And it works the exact same way, triggering the cutscene and adding the particles. But anyway, thank you all for watching. I have another video coming on some other experiments that I'm doing in the Godot engine, but I'm feeling pretty good about this project. I think this is a really good thing to have started out on, and a sort of really good proof of concept prototype to release for free as my first official game. So thank you all for sticking with me, and I hope to see you in the next video. Thanks.